Good morning here still. Palm Springs, California is where I am, and I'm a senior editor of the Hollywood Times and Aspiring magazine. And I'm so glad to have our guest here today, and we're going to be talking about his film. So thank you so much again, and please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Egan, the producer and creator of Transforming the Beautiful Game, the Clyde Best Story.
Excellent. Good for you. Really enjoyed your film, and I know you're in Williamsport getting ready for this festival, so
Y-
good. Wish
Yeah,
I
we're
could be
excited
there.
about the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So, Dan, what first drew you to Clyde Best's story, and why did you feel it needed to be told in a documentary?
Well, it's so rare to find a story that isn't widely known that like this, and Clyde Best being the first black superstar of the modern TV era in football in England, essentially the Jackie Robinson of England. And I've always known of the story because w way back in 1983, I played with Clyde's nephew in high school, Jerry Best. We were teammates at a small school in the middle of the woods of Maine, and Jerry always described his uncle as the Jackie Robinson of England. And I had seen Clyde play as a young teenager at the North American Soccer League when the Timbers would come to Boston and play the Boston Minutemen. I would go to those games, so I knew who Clyde was. And playing with Jerry was amazing. We won the state championships. He was the best player I'd ever seen. Uh, and the movie's about teammates. It's about mentorship. It's about coaching. And Jerry and I are lifelong friends, and that's what teams do, and that's what drew me to the story.
Appreciate that. Clyde is remembered as one of the first black soccer superstars of the modern television era in England, as you said. What do you hope viewers understand about the barriers he faced and the significance of what he achieved?
Well, the significance of being not only the only black player on the starting team at West Ham United in 1968 as a young 17-year-old boy, but quite often the only black person in the stadium. And on television, the only black face on UK television. There wasn't a newscaster, there wasn't an actor. It was Clyde Best, just Clyde Best. And that story, not known, is in itself a tragedy. But then what he overcame, his own fans threatening to throw acid on him when he ran on the field, the monkey chants, throwing bananas, and what he represented for today, the Premier League is 43% black. And Clyde Best started that whole trend. West Ham supported that with the start of two black players, Clyde and Addie Coker, and then eventually three black players. So, what we discovered was there was a version of Clyde that lived in Bermuda, where he's from. There was a version of Clyde in the UK with West Ham. There was a US version, but it wasn't all tied together. And when you put it together, it's a powerful story.
And I loved, speaking of Bermuda, all the shots of Bermuda. It makes me want to go there again so bad.
Wouldn't let
Um,
you.
yeah, the film highlights the historic 1972 match when Clyde Best, Clive Charles, and Ade Coker became the first three black players to start together in England's first division. Why was that moment so important beyond the soccer field?
Well, it was so important because to have three players represented in one game had never happened. Uh, Addy Coker, of course, scored. He was up until recently, he was the youngest black player ever to score on his debut in England. He scored as a 17-year-old on his debut just a couple months prior to the Easter Sunday of 72. But the significance of Easter Sunday 1972 in the West Ham starting Clive, Charles, Addy Coker, and Clyde Best was that it wouldn't happen again for another 6 years. And you have to ask yourself, why did it not happen again? When one, it was hugely popular. Two, they were scoring goals. And all three of those guys have gone on to become legends in the game. Um, so it really brings up, just how big a glass ceiling Clyde was breaking and how long it took for it really to be smashed open.
Mhm. And what timing that we're talking right now with the soccer matches going on. Love that part of it. Um, Clyde also helped shape professional soccer in the United States through his time with Tampa Bay Rowdies and Portland Timbers. How did the film balance his impact in England with his legacy in America?
Well, the World Cup happening today here in 2026, the success of the MLS, they all stand on the backs of the NASL, the North American Soccer League, which was a budding league from the late 60s into the early 80s. And Clyde Best arriving in Tampa Bay as their superstar, winning the Soccer Bowl 1975, the inaugural year of the Tampa Bay Rowdies, showed you the influence of what Clyde brought. But also, you in the film we show the relevance of Pele and what Pele brought when he came, but call out the difference, right? The difference was that Pele was this universal worldwide player, and he was the king. But Clyde Best represented the black and brown community a little bit differently. And so when he arrives in America, it sort of opens up the floodgates for all the players to come. People don't realize that the North American Soccer League was the most diverse sports league in the world at the time. It was more diverse than baseball, basketball, and football in this country. So it was significant, and every team wanted its superstar. Um, and what's interesting in North American soccer players was all the U.S. players they played in the defense. The European stars were sprinkled in the midfield and as forwards and strikers. And Clyde was a black European star, so he was a very unique guy to come here and light it up the way he did. Uh, and him and Pele were really one two and lifelong friends.
Beautiful. The documentary includes newly discovered archival footage and interviews with prominent figures from the soccer world. Was there one discovery or interview that especially surprised or moved you?
I'm fascinated. We found the so much, but the 1967 uh, Pan Am Games where little Bermuda wins a silver medal and lose against Mexico. Now, that's really relevant when you think of the Azteca and think of what Mexico, how they played in this current World Cup. That little Bermuda met them in the finals of the Pan Am Games in 67 and was a nil-nil draw after 90 minutes. And Clyde rings the post in 89th minute, and then they eventually lose in OT. So he was a 15-year-old boy. We found that footage and so much more. We found the interview with the West Ham manager on Clyde's debut. That was amazing to hear that. And Clyde himself had not seen this footage, because you wouldn't have. It would be broadcast and then gone. There wasn't the storage that we have today, even on VHS tape back then. So it's fascinating to see all the footage that we found from the BBC, from the Canadian broadcast, right on through to really early days in Bermuda.
All right, I'm going to switch gears here. What did Tony Head's narration and Roy Hayes' original music bring to the emotional tone of the film to you?
Love that. Thank you. Great question. The Tony, we were struggling with the narrator because was it going to be a British voice? Would it be a Bermudian voice? Would anybody buy an American voice? But the authenticity of Tony D. Head, the actor who you've seen on Law and Order, you've seen on The Wire, you've seen on Tyler Perry's new show, what he brought was the perspective um, from growing up in Boston at a time of a lot of racial strife in Boston in the 60s and 70s, being from Roxbury, understanding the neighborhood that he wouldn't go 4 blocks outside of his neighborhood because he knew it wouldn't be safe. And being the same age as Clyde and knowing that a 17-year-old boy not only left the neighborhood in Bermuda, but flew on a one-way ticket to a different country that he had never been for, and then makes the team and then scores over, close to 50 goals for West Ham United. Tony was like, I got to meet this guy because that's something as a youth I wouldn't have done. And how brave is Clyde to do that? And it's one thing if he had just left Bermuda and found his way to West Ham. which was a miracle story as you discover in the movie. But then he makes the first team, and then he becomes a legend. So Tony's becomes Clyde's advocate in the movie, and he really changed how the storytelling aspect of it. It was amazing. He did a beautiful job. And then on with Roy Hay, the founding member of Culture Club, you know, Clyde and I were in London. We were hanging around between interview shoots, and I get a phone one call one day, and on the end of my cell phone, the voice says, "Hey Dan, you don't know me, but I'm a rock star." And who doesn't want to, as a filmmaker, you want to get those phone calls. And that phone call came, and it was Roy Hay. He says, I grew up watching Clyde Best play in the East End of London. I would love to meet him. So Roy joined us in the hotel lobby. Um, Culture Club being the first DEI band in rock and roll, really, they were, but their message a little bit got lost because of how flamboyant Boy George was.
Mhm.
Uh, Roy really wanted this project because he knows the importance of diversity, inclusion. He knows of persevering, And so when he scored the whole movie, and of course, being a lifelong West Ham fan, his studio in LA is called Hammer Sound. So, you can't beat that. Can't beat
Love
that.
it. Thank you for those stories. How interesting. Um, the film is already screened in London, Bermuda, Portland, and Boston. And before we got on air, you told me you just left Atlanta, I believe, and
Yeah.
just dropped Clyde off at the airport, right? Is that
Yeah.
what happened? Okay.
Yeah.
So, what has the audience response been like in those very different communities?
Well, when we showed it a week ago at the Lincoln Center in New York City. It was amazing, and to see the diverse crowd and, the conversation that's around this movie. To have a sports documentary take a deep dive into racism in sports and really bring that out, it's something you don't see every day. And it's easy to make a documentary about, a big name star, but when you're introducing a new person to, who's somebody's story, we call Clyde the most impactful sportsman you never knew. Uh, and once you start to hook in, you're like, how did we not know this story? So the audience is in Bermuda, the audience is in England, the audience in Tampa, Portland, New York, Atlanta, Boston. It's been unbelievable. It's been diverse audiences. It's been amazing conversations before, after the film. And we do a lot of Q&As, and we've done just standalone Q&As with Addie and Clyde and Patrick Horn from the movie and Tony, of course. So it's fascinating. It's nice for me to be a part of. I love it.
Excellent. Good for you. I love being a part of it too right
Yeah.
now. Okay. So what does it mean to bring transforming the beautiful game, the Clyde Best Story, to the River Valley Film Festival? And what do you hope the audiences there take away from the screening?
Well, I think it's really important place, really in the heartland here in Pennsylvania, uh, showing that from a small place, big things can happen, that you can overcome adversity and income issues through excellence. That is the message of Clyde Best, through resilience and perseverance. These days, of course, we all want the world to know our opinion on social media. We want it out there. People are looking for platforms. Clyde's thing was score goals. And the harder it got for him, the more goals he scored. And that idea of just be productive, do your job, and great things will happen. And like Clyde says in the movie, I set out to do big things and I done it. Who wouldn't want to say that at the end of, their life?
Perfect. Finally, what is next for the documentary and where can viewers follow its continued festival journey or future release plans?
Thanks. Of course, at clydebest.com, you can see our tour continues. We were here in Pennsylvania, and then we're up at the Woods Hole Film Festival in Cape Cod. Uh, then we're off to show in my hometown of Plymouth, New Hampshire, in the middle of the White Mountains. We'll be back in Bermuda for a week in October. We're going to be in Grand Caymans, Jamaica, the Caribbean, and other places here, of course, in the States. So We're formalizing. We've got some offers now with streamers, and we're putting that together. So exciting news ahead for Clyde Best and the Clyde Best Story. Of course, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, the Clyde Best Story, and really at ClydeBest.com. Just you can watch it develop. And this is for me so organic because Clyde is a uniter. People come around Clyde, they community around Clyde, and it's just kind of going at its own pace, at its own thing. And it's been one of the most magical projects I've ever been a part of.
Love to hear it, Dan. Special to meet you.
You
So
too.
glad the film is out and doing so well with all these festivals. Please keep HollywoodTimes.net posted and aspiringmagazine.com. Our YouTube channel is the Hollywood Times Official. Keep us posted on how it's going and your future endeavors, please, Dan.
Thanks a lot. See everybody in
Thank
the
you.
theater.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Have a great time there in Williamsport. Bye-bye.
Take care.